Spring training is here, and with it, plenty of storylines, including Juan Soto wanting to win an MVP, a new bullpen arm for Carlos Mendoza, and the latest on the Mets starting rotation. Welcome back, another edition of the Believe in Mets pod. That is Jack McKessie. I am Chris Schubert here talking all things New York Mets. Mets baseball back in our live, spring training underway. Like I mentioned in the open, lots of great storylines for us to try to get to here today on the pod. Jack, how are you, my friend?
Chris, I'm great. I mean, you said it. Mets baseball is back in our lives. Spring training is underway. We've had a little bit under a week so far, but I'm already liking what I'm seeing from the trio of Mets outfield prospects, really, with Benge today, as in Wednesday, going 3 for 3. Nick Morabito stealing bases, hitting RBIs, making plays in the field. And then A.J. Ewing having some showouts so far this spring training. It's been not that long, but I'm getting very excited about the small sample sizes that we've had.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about the early start to, all the positives that we're getting so far at Mets camp is that they're all positives, right? There isn't a ton of negatives around this team right now outside of the Lindor injury, but that was before camp, and we're not super worried about it long term. He's more than likely going to be ready for opening day or at least close to it. And so it has really allowed us to enjoy what spring training is supposed to be about. The young players maybe having a small breakout before they contribute to this team down the road. Jonah Tong today, as we're recording this pod, just deciding, hey, I've got a cutter now, I'm going to throw it a bunch today, right? Those types of storylines you're able to enjoy more because mostly the vibes are positive. Now, there was a day last week where the vibes weren't very positive, and it was because within a span of, 12, 36 hours, 24 hours or so, you had Pete Alonso hit his first home run as a member of the Baltimore Orioles in spring, and that was juxtaposed with Bo Bichette making what was referred to as a bad throw in his first game at third base. And so I guess we start there so we can kind of get it out of the way, and you shrugged your shoulders when I brought it up, so I'll let you share your thoughts first. What did you make of everybody freaking out about Bo Bichette's, horrendous defense in his first outing as the third baseman of the New York Mets?
Well, even before I think that was literally the first play to him, or like among them. It was early in that game.
No, that was his first opportunity for sure.
Yeah, and before that even happened, though, there was a clip going around just showing all of his bloopers from practice, and I'm just going to note that short reel of bloopers came from a Phillies fan. I looked up where the original clip came from, and I'm, for one, not shocked to see a Phillies fan, what's the nice way to say this, dunking on Bo Bichette for his poor defense after he maybe spited Phillies fans and the Phillies organization by declining their longer-term contract to sign a shorter-term, higher AAV deal with the Mets. So that was already like pushing poor defense to the top of people's minds, if it wasn't already there, from all the discourse around him signing with the Mets after, we've talked about it. And then this play, Chris, I watched the play again right before we started recording. It's hard for me to put that on Bo Bichette. Like,
it's
I
not
understand
a bad throw. It's not a
that
bad
it's a
throw.
throwing error technically because it does pull the first baseman off the bag.
It's not a bad throw.
But Jose Rojas, who, by the way, is not a first baseman, he's a third baseman according to his profile on MLB.com. You got to come off the bag and make the tag. And then he does kind of come off the bag, kind of makes the tag, and then swings his glove, and the ball flies away, so there's no out and a run scores. I will not put that on Bo Bichette having horrific defense.
You really want... I'm going to really open up a wound for myself included by bringing this up, but people were treating Bo Bichette and that throw like it was Lucas Duda in the 2015 World Series, airmailing Travis Darnell. Like, that's how we treated that play. One, it's spring training. Two, it wasn't that bad. And it's funny because it was just a couple of days later, I think it was either yesterday or Monday, that Bichette makes a barehanded play moving to his left and then flicks off like a perfect throw and makes a great play. So, listen, let's not do this. Like, let's not be these people. Let Bo Bichette learn a new position. Let him go through. I'd rather him make these mistakes now, and so that he's not making them in a big series against Philadelphia or Atlanta late in the season. And yeah, this is part of the quirks of learning a new position this late in your career. And I don't expect it to be, I don't expect him to be a platinum glover over there at third base. I expect him to be decent, if not, slightly above average. And I think he's athletic enough to learn the position. So let's let that process play out. But it was just Bichette doing that, Pete hitting the home run for Baltimore. It was just like everybody was just waiting for their moment to jump all over the New York Mets, and they were given like 2 back-to-back things in a very short time span that they could freak out about. Although Bo Bichette with the bat's doing pretty well, so I'm very excited about what we're seeing on the offensive side.
Yes, I will say, like, just in general for spring training, like, a lot of what we're seeing now, it's hard to take super seriously as this is an indicator of what's going to happen during the regular season. I think for Bichette and his defense, learning a new position is obviously a big part of that. But I also look at pitching and pitching performances. I take those especially with a big grain of salt, because this is the opportunity for these veteran or even younger pitchers like Jonah Tong to work in a new type of pitch or maybe tweak what they're working on, seeing how it plays in live action against another team rather than in live batting practice against their teammates, whatever. Like, Jonah Tong giving up a 3-run homer on his cutter doesn't worry me at all, because it's the first time he's throwing his cutter in a live game. So I'm just going to remind our listeners here, everything you see out of spring training, good or bad, frankly, take it with a bit of a grain of salt, because this is the time where players are experimenting with all sorts of new things. When the regular season starts, if Bo Bichette's booting the ball around the infield, I'll be the first one to say, get that guy to DH, like put Brett Beatty out there or someone else. But for now, let's calm down. Let's calm down.
I love the podcaster in you that just went on that whole rant about taking everything with a grain of salt when it comes to pitching. And here I am going to transition into, I'd like to pour the whole container of salt out because I want to talk about how great Ryan Lambert looked. Yes. I want to completely overreact to an outing in spring training, if it's all right with you.
Of course.
Because, yes, I mostly agree with that. But Ryan Lambert was so impressive the other day for the Mets in his scoreless inning, the 3 strikeouts, throwing upper 90s, the off-speed stuff, getting a strikeout. Like, he looked the part of a big league elite leverage type reliever, and I don't know if he'll make the team out of camp. There's a lot of spots already locked up with some of the veterans this team has, but boy, if the Mets need some help in the bullpen throughout the course of the season, last year you kind of knew the group of names that they would turn to. Ryan Lambert is one of those young ascending arms that could be in there for a long time, and it looks like, Justin Willard, the pitching lab, whoever you want to give credit to, Ryan Lambert, they got a dude here who might be pitching in Queens sooner rather than later.
I will say the difference between the over-exaggeration of Bo Bichette's defense versus Ryan Lambert is, for Bichette, it's like a results-based thing, like you're disappointed about the error or whatever mistakes he's making in practice. Ryan Lambert, you can look at the data here, and I have Pitch Profiler here from X.
Well, I got TJ stats up, so we can use both.
Has some numbers that have me extremely excited about Lambert stuff, and obviously results are very exciting. I'm not as interested in his 3 strikeouts late in a spring training game against 3 Blue Jays prospects that I frankly haven't ever heard of. But what I am really excited about, and what I am removing some of the salt to take into consideration here, his stuff plus on his 4-seam, according to Pitch Profile here, 114. Stuff plus on the slider, 107. Got to 99 with his fastball, but his induced vertical break, Chris, 21.5 inch on average. And I went to StatCast and I said, who else is averaging around 20 plus inches of induced vertical break? The answer is nobody. Like, there's no one who's throwing that fast and also has that much. For our listeners who don't know, induced vertical break on a fastball, essentially, if it's positive, it means it looks like it rises, like it has a bit of a rising action, because the gravity doesn't take hold because of the spin of the ball as much. And so what I'm seeing here from Lambert through, again, 1 appearance against Blue Jays randos, for lack of a better term.
That's fair. No, I think that's fair to call them randos. Yeah.
Is like not just the high velocity, but also the induced vertical break that makes it extremely difficult to hit. And we saw that, especially if you watch that second at-bat, that second strikeout he had. The last pitch is just like, dude does not know where the ball is when he's swinging through there. And that's not just a velo thing, that's also a spin thing. And that's what has me really excited about Lambert and his profile as a back of the bullpen guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at, some of the best closers in baseball, obviously Edwin Diaz is on that list. You put Johan Duran on that list as well in Philadelphia. And these are the guys that you look to. And, these are the types of numbers that Lambert is putting up that would put him right in the mix with those guys. I'm not saying that Ryan Lambert's going to be the next Edwin Diaz or the next Johan Duran. I'm just pointing out how impressive it is that at 23 years old, he's performing these types of results. And this is somebody that you put a star next to. This is somebody that you keep an eye on the train's going to leave the station here for Lambert with how well he pitched and if he continues to pitch this well, because the first time Devin Williams blows a save, I can't wait for the tweets about Ryan Lambert and Dylan Ross. Like, I can't wait for those tweets because you just know they're going to come the first time, Luke Weaver's giving things up in the 8th inning. You're like, oh, get me Ryan Lambert out there because I just know how this fan base operates. But it's really encouraging for the Mets because so much of our focus has been on the starting pitching side with Nolan McLean, with Christian Scott, with Jonah Tong, and the young pitchers that they're, trying to develop after those guys. There hasn't been a ton of focus, and maybe this is our responsibility to start, but on the bullpen. And that is a very important part of what the Mets are trying to do with their pitching development, is not just pump out starters, but also pump out super high leverage relievers, because guess what? I love Devin Williams. I loved Edwin Diaz. Still love Edwin Diaz. But it's a lot better when you don't have to pay closer level market rate for Edwin Diaz or Devin Williams, and you just are able to create those guys out of your pitching lab because you know how to draft these guys, you know how to work with these guys, you know how to coach these guys. And Ryan Lambert may be the beginning of this next crop of relievers that the Mets have, that now they start to have their own Johan Duran. They don't have to trade for Edwin Diaz like they did. They don't have to sign Devin Williams. They are developing these guys on their own. That, to me, is where the Mets player development kind of graduates to this next stage of, we don't have to go out and sign and pay big money. We're creating these guys. We're developing these guys on our own.
Exactly. And that's the kind of stuff that gets me excited about the whole pitching staff. Like you said it already, Chris, we've focused on the starting pitching side of things. We've seen what the player development, the pitching development lab has been able to do with McLean looking like an ace-level pitcher, with Jonah Tong having the upside that he does, leading minor leagues in strikeouts. But to also know that not just from Ryan Lambert, but also guys like Daniel Nunez who have come up through the system, guys like Ross, who you mentioned, like, these are players that are going to be impactful in the major league level because of the bullpen additions that they can provide. It's not just the starting pitching reinforcement that the Mets have from McLean, Tong, Tobias Myers, like adding Freddie Peralta, like everyone they have on the starting pitching side. They also have a supplement of young relief options that they can bring up and contribute, because Lord knows we saw how last year there was a lot of shuffling going around in the bullpen. And if injuries crop up, as they always do, or people struggle, as they tend to do, the Mets will have a bigger cater of reinforcements to come up and contribute.
Yeah, with the two big ones being Dylan Ross and Ryan Lambert, especially with the way that he's looked so far in spring. And I just remind everybody, Ryan Lambert was drafted in the 8th round of the 2024 draft. So the fact that he is potentially in a position to threaten a spot, less than 2 years since he was drafted, is just incredible player development. And you got to give credit to everybody. You give credit to the player, but you also will give credit to the Mets coaching staff and their player development. They're doing an incredible job. And this is where, and I know we've mentioned this before on the pod, but it bears reiterating, this is where Steve Cohen's money has really helped the Mets turn their franchise around, is that there's so much investment and development into their player development side of things and how they take a player and they have the technology and they have the systems and they have the data and they have all of the resources that you could possibly imagine to make that player the best version of themselves. And that's how the Mets bridge this gap. And they become, I'll use what Steve Cohen said when he first bought the team, the Dodgers of the East, right? That's what they want to be. That's the Mets North Star. Well, the Dylan Rosses and the Ryan Lamberts of the world, along with the Jonah Tongs and the Christian Scotts and the Nolan McLeans, and the Carson Benges, right? This is how the Mets bridge that gap. And I guess since I brought him up, we can quickly talk about him. Carson Benge is having a great start to spring. It's fun because Mike Tauchman's not making it easy on him, and Mike Tauchman goes deep in his first game as a Met, and you certainly think that the Mets may ultimately err on the side of caution and give Benge a little bit of time down there in AAA if Tauchman continues to hit well. But good to see that the Mets right field battle is a good minor league signing and also a prospect that so far looks like he's ready. I mean, 3 for 3 today as we're recording, but he worked like a 10-pitch at bat today too. He's so good at working the counts and working these at bats, and That's the thing that I think the Mets are really looking for. I think the underlying data, the exit velos, the power, that's going to be there. The jump from minor league pitching to big league pitching is how can you work within an at-bat? Can you foul off that close pitch 2-2 to keep the at-bat alive and get a pitch to hit? Can you just work good counts and put yourself in advantageous situations? And that, to me, is when you mature to be a big leaguer and you're somebody that, has to be in the lineup every day. And Carson Benge is certainly showing those things early.
I think when I looked at Carson Benge's performance today, as well as some other moments throughout spring training so far, and again, it's been less than a week, but some of the signs that I'm seeing from the Mets and their philosophy this offseason, reducing strikeouts and maximizing every at-bat, getting the most that you can out of every at-bat. And Carson Benge today, you mentioned the 10-pitch at-bat. That's definitely the highlight of the day, to come away from a 10-pitch battle with a pitcher and not only get on base, but do it via hit. All 3 of his hits today were with 2 strikes. Like, that's the kind of situational hitting that the Mets have really, at least in 2025, missed. How many times did we see a guy come up and get 2 strikes early in a count, and then you just figure that the at-bat is over at that point? They've maybe given up, or things aren't going to turn out well for the Mets. It might end up in a double play ground out. Carson Benge hitting with 2 strikes, all three at-bats, using all 3 levels of the field, a couple of hits to the other side, an infield one, a line drive to left field, and then a grounder to the right side, all with 2 strikes. And I love seeing stuff like that from him. Another situation that I can't remember if it was yesterday or 2 days ago, Bo Bichette flying out on a sac fly situation to center field. And I saw a tweet that was like, Pete Alonso strikes out there and leaves the guy on third base, and it's aggravating. And it's true. The Mets' philosophy is making the most out of at-bats and plate appearances to the point where they're able to create run situations. They're able to get guys on base. They're able to hit the ball in play and make good things happen, rather than last year's Mets team with guys like Nimmo and Alonso. Yeah, they had the power a lot of the time, which made up for it sometimes, but the amount of strikeouts was just so high that I think the philosophy is so clear to me going into 2026. They're trying to limit the strikeouts and maximize putting the ball in play and making those good things happen.
Yeah, how about this for not only further emphasizing the point that you just made, but also this could be, on a quote. You know how sometimes in the office you have those motivational quotes? There's a decent chance this could already be up in David Stearns' office, attributed to Carson Benge after the game. Quote, "I hate striking out." Like, but to your point, the Mets clearly are changing how they construct a lineup, and Carson Benge saying that and having the day that he had and, showing off the ability to hit with 2 strikes, like, that's what the Mets are trying to do. They still want the pop. It's why they have Lindor. It's why they have Soto. It's why they have Bichette, right? Polanco in the 20 home runs, and Benge has power in his game. But, like, Carson Benge, those let me do 1, 2, 3. For those 4 words, "I hate striking out," could be like the credo of the 2026 New York Mets. Like, it's what they want to do. They want to be the contact first. We're going to make you work for every out you get. And it's just really great to see. Should we talk about our future NL MVP, Juan Soto? Boy, did these comments get me ready to run through a wall. I was ready for opening day when these comments were made.
I was going to say, Chris, speaking of guys who don't strike out a whole lot and guys who know the strike zone, I mean, it's been really fun watching Juan Soto in this spring training so far. And I think he had a live batting practice situation with Jonah Tong where Tong challenged a pitch and Soto knew that it was a ball down by like less than an inch or something. But the comment that you're referring to here about how he needs to catch...
I've got the quote. I have the quote.
You should say the actual quote, but it had me fired up.
Juan Soto about Shohei Ohtani and the current reigning NL MVP. Quote, "He better keep doing what he's doing because I'm coming." I don't want to... It's spring training, right? We said it at the beginning. We've said it a couple of times here as a disclaimer. I'm trying not to, overly react to things that happen in spring, right? This is the type of comment that makes me feel Juan Soto is ready to make this his team. Juan Soto is fully comfortable being a New York Met. Not to say he wasn't last year, because I think he was. He had a great season, right? He did have a slow start, but once the light bulb went off, it was everything.
MVP finalist.
Right. It was everything that you expect from Juan Soto. But this comment, There's already a bunch of stories being written about how everybody around the team just gravitates towards him, and he's joking with players, and he's taken Luis Robert Jr. under his wing, and it just really feels like, and this is no shade to Francisco Lindor, but this very much feels like an extension of what Steve Cohen said about how I don't want there to be a captain. I want these players to figure it out. Lindor can be a leader, but right now Lindor's kind of working on the side. He's trying to get back from an injury, and so Juan Soto's filling that leadership void, and it just feels like he is ready. He's moving to left field. He's super excited about that. It feels different. There was so much excitement about Juan Soto showing up to Mets spring training for the first time and being a New York Met, but it just feels different this year because, man, if he's saying those things, the confidence is there, the leadership's already been on display, and the Mets are going to need Juan Soto to be that version of Juan Soto that he talked about in that quote, for them to do what they want to do, which is win a championship. But man, these are the types of things that get you really excited for a baseball season because you know how good he can be. And if he does what he said he's going to do, we're in for a lot of fun with Juan Soto this year.
Another thing I really liked to see from Soto, and I think it was also in that quote that you pulled came from Anthony DiComo's article about Juan Soto. Another thing he said in that same article was, I feel like everybody tries to do better than what they did before. I would definitely love to be better around the bases and better around the outfield. Even hitting, I try to keep my hitting increased, et cetera, et cetera. I was so encouraged by last season. Soto comes in, he's this guy that just set the new record for total value on an MLB contract. Highest paid player in baseball by total value, $765 million. And instead of kind of resting on his laurels, focusing on the hitting, continuing to do what he had been doing for the last 7 years of his career, he goes out and steals 30 bases. He adds the base running to his arsenal as a player. He's been talking about now getting better, even better at that, getting better at his fielding, which has been a detriment to his game so far. He's moving to left field where he feels more comfortable. We saw him make a nice catch in left field the other day as well.
Little shoestring action. Little
shoestring action. I'm just so encouraged by seeing a guy like Soto, especially now in year 2, continuing to say, I'm not resting on a MVP finalist season. I'm going for the whole thing. I want Shohei Ohtani to be on notice, a guy who first 50-50 player in baseball, guy who pitches and hits at an elite level. Juan Soto is saying, I'm going to do everything I can to continue competing because I want to push myself and my team, like you mentioned with taking Luis Robert Jr. under his wing and having a team building outing with teammates at a mini golf thing tonight.
As we're recording this pod, they're doing it. Yeah, it was organized by Lindor, Soto, Peterson, Holmes, I think were
Freddie Peralta.
Freddie Peralta. I mean,
yeah.
And there's so much, I didn't mean to cut you off, but there's been so much made about the culture of the team last year. And so I do wonder if the reporters are kind of really kind of trying to focus on that narrative. And so that's why we're seeing so much reporting, but it just feels so different, right? It just feels different than it did a year ago. And of course it's going to be different because there's so much new. There are so many new players, but like the accountability from Carlos Mendoza, like saying yeah, I messed up a bunch of stuff last year. Like I need to be better. The players taking the accountability, the players trying to showcase not just in the results on the field, but in their actions. It's so noticeable that the Mets are striving for a better culture, and so far it looks like it's paying dividends. At the end of the day, it's winning cures all, and so if this culture is going to mean something, we'll see it in terms of the results here once the season starts in a couple of weeks. But I'll tie it back to what I said at the top. It's good that mostly it's all positive stories around the New York Mets right now. Like there isn't anything that's gone wrong. I'll knock on wood on my desk here in front of me. Like it just feels like everything is going right for this team right now, and it's just fun to be a part of.
Yeah, I totally agree. Another thing that I had seen earlier in spring training, I think it was right around the time that guys were starting to report down in Port St. Lucie, but we saw at the end of the 2025 season that a lot of players voiced that they felt that between Carlos Mendoza as the manager and David Stearns as the president of baseball operations, they didn't feel a lot of communication from those guys throughout the season, from decisions they were making. One of the first quotes I saw from when guys reported to spring training was Brett Beatty saying, I knew that they were planning to sign Bo Bichette and having him play third base before any rumors ever came out about that. They were talking to me through the whole process. They said they still believed in me. They kept giving me their vote of confidence. They're saying they want me to get at-bats going forward. They believe in me in my career. Like everything, as bad as last season was and how it ended, everything that I've seen so far in this early spring training, early preseason is they're doing everything they can to continue building up the culture of this team. And it starts with guys like Francisco Lindor showing up despite his hamate bone fracture and surgery. Guys like Juan Soto showing up, joking around with players in camp, introducing himself to all the new guys, whether they're young or free agents that came in, taking guys under his wing. Like, those guys at the top are, I think, it starts with them on the field, but I think it even starts above them with guys like Stearns and Mendoza and even Steve Cohen as the owner, and having all of that good energy, good communication, good teamwork trickle down for all of the players on the field as well. And I hope that results in a better result in 2026 than it did in 2025.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to be the podcast that spends the entire year, throwing shade at the guys who were here last year, because they're some of my all-time favorite Mets. But the Mets needed to make a change, and you're starting to at least see part of the reasons why they needed to make that change, just with how differently things feel. And again, not a shot at those guys. Things just got stale, right? And it just required a change in order to get things back on track. And I think you're starting to see the fruits of that labor thus far. That'll do it for us here. I mean, there's so much good to talk about. Ryan Lambert's season is in full effect. Bo Bichette, one day was the worst third baseman in the sport. The other day was a gold glover out there. You never know what you're going to get. Juan Soto and his MVP comments. Jonah Tong threw 18 of his 50 pitches were a cutter today. You just never know when you show up to the ballpark and spring training is underway what you're going to expect. But it's been a lot of fun, and we'll be here to break it all down the rest of the way. We have an episode coming to you over the weekend. We're back to 2 episodes a week, and before you know it, the season is going to be here. So in the meantime, if you are new, or if you haven't done so already, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast wherever you are listening to us. If you want to watch the show, YouTube, Jack McKessy, McKessy is where you can watch and join the YouTube fanatics, the Mets fanatics over there on the YouTube side of things that hang out with us and watch the show over there. We're back over the weekend. Enjoy the rest of this week and all the good around the New York Mets. We're back next time, and as always, let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.